Hey guys, Ridgeway here. So I'm going to just be doing a quick video walkthrough to help explain this quick slide deck on U.S. imperialism in the Philippines. So what you're going to be seeing here in the Philippines is a really good example of lots of different things that we've been talking about in recent lessons. Things like industrialization, manifest destiny, and again, other things around imperialism that are all coming together to be kind of a confluence of factors here. So again, the United States at this point is heavily into the Industrial Revolution. Well, really the market revolution at this point. It'll really hit the Industrial Revolution hard after the 1860s. But also, again, just a reminder about this idea of manifest destiny. It's very much prominent. It's kind of in the literature and the zeitgeist of the time. Again, the idea that this, U.S. exceptionality, the need to spread democracy, everywhere, and kind of a duty then to kind of uplift those who were quote unquote oppressed. So, with all those kind of things combined, again, if you didn't happen to do the background lesson or the other lesson on the Spanish-American War, okay, there was a very slow, or very quick rather, war between the United States and Spain that happens in 1898. Okay, and so the reason why I bring this up and why it's worth mentioning is that as a part of and a consequence of that war, again, the war is mostly manufactured by the United States. There's lots of people in it that you might have heard of, such as, for example, like Teddy Roosevelt and other other characters who come out of this very famous. One of the big consequences of that war, and what we're going to focus on here, is that the United States, even before the war breaks out, Teddy Roosevelt is going to arrange for a U.S. fleet to steam its way towards the Philippines, even before war has started. And so once the war then begins, again, with the U.S. already in possession of Hawaii, taking the Philippines away from Spain, which was one of their colonies, is going to be a clear objective of the United States. Now, how does this exactly happen, and what all occurs there? So while the war is going on with Spain, the U.S. does invade. They send armed forces there, and they actually help the local Filipino resistance that was being led by this guy right up here. His name's Emilio Aguinaldo. He actually has been fighting the Spanish for a long time. They assist in helping kick the Spanish out. Now, to make a very long story short, and for the time that we have here, the United States and the Filipinos eventually just become distrustful of one another, and the United States thinks that the Filipinos aren't really actually their true allies. The Filipinos also become suspicious that the United States may have ulterior motives for being in the Philippines, and to make a very long story short, a really nasty insurgency breaks out. So this would be like in modern day parallels, like very similar to like what the United States went through in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So it's not like mass armies fighting against one another. It's going to be this very nasty, brutish attempt by the United States to root out the Filipino resistance. So the U.S. is going to, we'll talk about the outcome of that here in a second, but the outcome of this, or what the United States wants, is a couple of different things. Seizing control of the Philippines is a way for some people that you'll learn about if you go and check out the speech by Albert Beveridge, who was a senator from the United States in Indiana at the time. This is like a chance for manifest destiny on steroids. For those who are more economically minded, or perhaps militarily, this is a way that the United States could spread its influence in places like Asia. Why would the Philippines be economically valuable? Well, for trade with China, Japan, a couple other places. But also, the Philippines themselves was one of the major hemp producers at the time. And if you don't know, at this time, hemp was not one of these things that people are using to make weed. It was actually really instrumental in the making of rope, which if you're trying to make navies and things like that, rope is something that you actually really desperately need. So with all that in mind then, yeah, Aguinaldo begins this insurgency fight kind of against U.S. forces, and it's really, really nasty. Both the U.S. forces and Filipinos will engage in what we would today consider to be war crimes. It's very, very cutthroat, a lot of torture, just a lot of really brutal tactics back and forth. So again, it's an insurgency that, they will Filipino resistance forces will try to disguise themselves as civilians and engage in hit and run tactics. And the U.S. is really flummoxed for quite a few years on how to actually deal with this. They do utilize some Filipinos to help them. There's this divide that gets cut between in Filipino society about whether to side with the United States or not. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it ends with Aguinaldo being captured and the insurgency being put down. Now, what happens from this point on is when the U.S. then takes charge. It's actually, if you know this guy, one of our very obese presidents, Taft here. He's actually going to take charge as kind of like a U.S. civilian government that is there. They are going to do some very limited allowance of Filipino self-government. They're going to do some changes to the judicial system and other things like that, but the real power in the room and people, again, the real people who run the Filipino government is going to be the United States. There's also a lot, if you do a lot of the readings that get into the U.S. occupation of the Philippines, it gets into some really interesting racial history, which, again, for me is always something that I like to study and look at. And it was this kind of very interesting parallels about U.S. soldiers writing home and how they were trying to kind of tease out the racial differences between themselves and Filipinos. Just lots of stuff there to unpack with Manifest Destiny and things like that. But basically kind of the trajectory of Filipino history then is really dominated by the U.S. control of the Philippines until after World War II. And that is when the Philippines is going to be granted independence by the United States. So, again, kind of this very interesting imperialistic kind of insurgency preview moment of things maybe that we're more familiar with in more current times. So I hope this was kind of a helpful walkthrough of just this imperialism moment in U.S. history, and I'll see you in the rest of your lessons. All right, bye.